Crazy ways Japanese courtesans dealt with pregnancies. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Tonight, we're stepping into the elaborate, complex world of the Edo period's most misunderstood women, the Oiran Japan's highest-ranking courtesans. And specifically, we're exploring something history books rarely discuss openly: what happened when pregnancy entered the picture in a world where image, reputation, and economic survival depended entirely on maintaining an illusion of availability and perfection. You wake up in your room on the second floor of the Yoshiwara, Tokyo's most famous pleasure district. It's 1720, and outside your shoji screen window, you can hear the wooden geta sandals of early morning vendors clacking against stone pathways. The air carries the scent of incense, soy sauce, and something else, the faint, sweet smell of the camellia oil that keeps your elaborate hairstyle from collapsing overnight. You are an oiran, not a geisha. Let's be clear about this distinction, because even today, people confuse the two. A geisha entertains with art, music, and conversation. Her obi is tied in the back, symbolically suggesting she's not going anywhere quickly. Your obi is tied in the front. Quick access. Your job involves all the artistry of a geisha, the dancing, the poetry, the witty conversation, but it often ends in a private room with silk curtains and a man who paid more for one evening than most people see in a year. This morning, however, something is different. You've been feeling queasy for weeks. Your monthly bleeding stopped 2 months ago. And yesterday, when you tried to lace your obi as tightly as usual, you couldn't. Your stomach, which has always been flat as a tatami mat, now has a subtle roundness that makes your heart race with panic. You're pregnant. In 21st century terms, this might be cause for joy, contemplation, or at least a conversation with a healthcare provider. In Edo-period Japan, as an oiran, this is potentially the end of your world. Your value, your income, your very identity depends on being desirable to men who specifically seek the fantasy of a beautiful, available woman. Pregnancy doesn't just threaten your figure, it threatens your livelihood, your house's investment in you, and quite possibly your life. The morning light filters through your window as you sit on your futon, still wearing the silk sleeping kimono that costs more than a farmer's annual income. Your room is beautiful lacquered furniture, painted screens, porcelain tea sets, but it's also a cage. A very expensive, very visible cage. And now you're trapped inside it with a secret that's growing larger every day. You hear footsteps in the hallway. Your Komuro, the young girl who serves as your assistant, will be here soon with your morning tea and rice. She's maybe 10 years old, sold to the house by parents who couldn't afford to keep her. In a few years, if she's lucky and pretty enough, she might become an oiran herself. If not, she'll serve women like you until her hands are too rough and her back too bent to be useful. The footsteps pause outside your door. A soft knock. Oiran-sama, your morning meal. You take a breath, arrange your face into the serene mask you've perfected over years of training, and call out, "Enter." The Komuro slides open the door and bows deeply. She's carrying a lacquered tray with rice, miso soup, pickled vegetables, and tea. Normally, the smell of miso in the morning is comforting. Today, it makes your stomach lurch. "Are you well?" Oiran-sama, the girl asks, noticing your pale complexion. You're not well, you're terrified. But showing fear is not an option in your profession. "I'm fine," you say smoothly. "Perhaps I had too much sake last night." She nods and begins arranging the meal. As she works, you study her small hands, her thin shoulders. You were once her age when you arrived at this house. You remember the confusion, the homesickness, the slow realization that your childhood was over. Now, 15 years later, you're facing another kind of ending. The girl finishes and bows again. Shall I prepare your bath, Oiran-sama? Not yet, you say. I need to think. When she leaves, you're alone with your secret and your rice, which you can't eat because the smell makes you nauseous. You need to make a decision, and you need to make it quickly. In your world, there are really only three options when an Oiran becomes pregnant, and none of them are particularly pleasant. Option 1. Attempt to end the pregnancy using methods that are whispered about in back rooms and involve herbs, teas, and practices that could easily kill you. Option 2. Try to hide the pregnancy for as long as possible, then disappear when it becomes obvious, forfeiting everything you've worked for and ending up as an impoverished single mother in a society that shows little mercy to such women. Option 3. Tell your mama-san, the woman who owns your contract, and hope she decides you're valuable enough to keep around despite your condition. None of these options guarantee survival, let alone happiness. You set down your chopsticks and move to your mirror, a polished bronze disc that reflects your face with haunting clarity. Your white makeup from last night is smudged, revealing the natural skin beneath. Without the elaborate face paint, you look younger, more vulnerable, more human. In a few hours, you'll need to apply fresh makeup, arrange your hair in the towering Nihongami style that requires a dozen hairpins and takes 2 hours to complete, and dress in layers of silk kimono that weigh nearly as much as you do. You'll paint your lips in the perfect bow shape, line your eyes with charcoal, and transform yourself into a living work of art. But first, you need to decide whether you're going to fight to keep this life or whether you're going to let the growing secret inside you destroy it. Outside, the Yoshiwara is waking up. Merchants are calling out their wares. Shamisen players are tuning their instruments for the evening's performances. And somewhere in the distance, you can hear the rhythmic clacking of a loom where women weave the silk that will become kimono like yours. This floating world, as the pleasure districts are called, operates on illusion. Men come here to forget their wives, their duties, their problems. They pay extraordinary sums to spend time with women who are beautiful, talented, and seemingly unencumbered by the messy realities of ordinary life. Pregnancy is about as real as reality gets. You touch your stomach gently. Whatever's growing inside you is no bigger than a plum, but it might as well be a revolution. Everything you've trained for, everything you've endured, everything you've built, all of it balanced on the edge of this tiny, impossible secret. The morning sun climbs higher, and you can hear your house beginning to stir. Soon other Oiran will wake, servants will begin preparing for the day, and your mama-san will expect to see you looking perfect, performing perfectly, earning perfectly. Time to decide. Time to figure out just how crazy you're willing to get to survive in a world that has no patience for inconvenient truths. You decide to start with information. In the Yoshiwara, knowledge is currency, and the women who survive longest are those who know where to find answers to dangerous questions. There's a woman named Okiku who runs a small tea shop just outside the district's main gates. Officially, she sells tea, rice cakes, and gossip to visitors. Unofficially, she knows things. She knows which clients have strange preferences, which houses are in financial trouble, and most importantly for your current situation, she knows about herbs. You wait until late afternoon when the midday crowd has thinned, but the evening rush hasn't begun. Wrapping yourself in a plain cotton kimono and covering your elaborate hairstyle with a simple hood, you slip out of your house through the servant's entrance. Your mama-san believes you're resting in your room preparing for tonight's performance. The walk to Okiku's shop takes you through narrow alleys where the glamorous facade of the Yoshiwara gives way to something more honest. Here you see the servants who empty chamber pots, the seamstresses who repair torn kimono after enthusiastic clients get too grabby, and the old women who were once oiran themselves but now survive by cooking rice and pretending they don't remember what it felt like to be desired. Okiku's shop is tiny, just 4 tatami mats and a small alcove where she keeps her tea supplies. She's in her 50s, thin as a reed, with intelligent eyes that seem to catalog everything they see. When you enter, she looks up from the ledger where she's recording the day's sales. Well, she says, setting down her brush. What brings the famous Hanayuki to my humble shop, and dressed like a servant girl, no less? You appreciate that she doesn't pretend not to recognize you. I need information. Information costs extra. She gestures to a cushion across from her. Sit. Tell me what kind of information. You kneel gracefully, despite the plain kimono and the growing tightness in your abdomen. The kind that involves timing problems. Okiku nods slowly. She's had this conversation before. The kind of timing problems that affect young women in your profession. How much does such information cost? Depends on what you want to know. If you want to know about teas and herbs that might solve timing problems, that's one price. If you want to know about women who help with more direct solutions, that's another price. If you want to know about houses that might keep you even with timing problems, that's a very expensive conversation. You reach into your sleeve and pull out a small silk pouch. Inside are 5 gold koban, more money than Okiku sees in a good month. I want to know everything. Her eyes widen slightly at the sight of the gold, but her expression remains businesslike. Everything is a lot. Are you sure you want everything? Yes, she pours tea for both of you, taking her time, letting the silence stretch. Finally, she speaks. First, the teas. There's pennyroyal, bitter and dangerous. Tansy, which smells sweet but can stop your heart if you use too much. Rue, which tastes like regret and works maybe half the time. Cotton root bark, if you can find it, though it's more common in China. All of these can solve timing problems, but they can also solve the problem of being alive. Mix them wrong, use too much, and you'll solve all your problems permanently. You nod, keeping your expression neutral despite the fear creeping up your spine. Second, the women. There's a midwife named Baba Yuki who lives near the Sumida River. She's old, experienced, and discreet. She knows methods that don't involve herbs, physical methods. They're unpleasant, but they work more reliably than teas. She charges 20 silver pieces and asks no questions. And the third option, Okiku's expression grows more serious. That's complicated. Most houses will release an oiran immediately if she becomes pregnant. It's a business, and pregnancy is bad for business. But there are exceptions. If you're particularly valuable, if you have powerful clients who would be angry to lose you, sometimes a mama-san will find ways to work around the problem. What kind of ways? Tight wrapping to hide the pregnancy as long as possible. Claims of illness to explain absence. Sometimes, if the child's father is wealthy and important arrangements can be made, the child goes to a farm family, the oiran returns to work after a few months of illness, and everyone pretends nothing happened. You sip your tea thinking, has anyone ever kept working while pregnant? Okiku laughs, but there's no humor in it. You mean, has any oiran ever been pregnant and continued seeing clients? Yes, child. Some of the most expensive courtesans in Kyoto have done exactly that. Early pregnancy before it shows when you just feel sick and tired. Some women work through it because they can't afford not to. The clients don't know, the house doesn't know, and if you're careful with your wrapping and skilled with your makeup, you can hide it for months. This possibility hadn't occurred to you. How long? Depends on your body, your skills, and your luck. I've known women who worked until their 6th month. After that, even the most elaborate kimono can't hide what's happening. But 6 months is 6 months of income, 6 months to plan 6 months to save money for whatever comes next. You finish your tea in silence, processing this information. None of it is good, but some of it is better than you'd hoped. One more question, you say. If someone chose the third option, working while pregnant, what would she need to know? Okiku refills your cup. She'd need to know about foods that settle the stomach without being obvious about it. Ginger root, small amounts of pickled plum. She'd need to know about wrapping techniques that compress the abdomen without restricting breathing. She'd need to know which positions are comfortable and which ones aren't, and how to redirect clients who want things that might be problematic. And she'd need to be prepared for it to end badly. Okiku continues, because eventually everyone finds out, and when they do, the consequences are severe. Pregnancy might be natural, but in your world, it's a betrayal of the fantasy that men pay for. You place the silk pouch on the low table between you, for the information and for your discretion. Okiku picks up the pouch and tucks it into her kimono. What information? We talked about tea today. Nothing more. You bow politely and prepare to leave. At the door, Okiku calls out softly, Hanayuki-san, whatever you decide, be careful. The Yoshiwara eats women who take too many risks. You nod and step back into the narrow alley. The afternoon sun is beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Soon, the pleasure district will come alive with lanterns, music, and men looking for an escape from their ordinary lives. You have about 3 hours before you're expected to appear in the main parlor, fully dressed and painted, ready to charm clients who have no idea that the beautiful, serene woman pouring their sake is making calculations about survival that would terrify them. 3 hours to decide which kind of crazy you're going to choose. You return to your house through the same servant's entrance, but instead of going directly to your room, you take a detour through the kitchen. It's a calculated risk. If your mama-san sees you in plain clothes, there will be questions you can't answer. But you need to observe, to think, to let the information from Okiku settle in your mind. The kitchen is busy with preparations for the evening. Servants are arranging delicate dishes on lacquered trays, preparing the elaborate meals that will accompany tonight's entertainment. The head cook, a woman named Taki, who's worked in pleasure houses for 30 years, notices you immediately. Hanayuki-san, why are you dressed like that? Her voice carries concern, not accusation. Taki has always been kind to you, perhaps because she remembers what it was like to be young and vulnerable in this floating world. I needed air, you say simply. The room felt confining. Taki nods knowingly. She's seen enough Oiran over the years to recognize the signs of someone carrying a heavy burden. Come here, child. Sit down. She guides you to a small stool in the corner where the kitchen servants take their brief breaks. From a ceramic jar, she pulls out a small piece of crystallized ginger and hands it to you. For the stomach, she says quietly, sometimes the stress of this life, it makes us ill in ways that show. You look at her sharply. Does she know? Has she guessed? Taki's expression is gentle but knowing. I've been in houses like this since I was younger than your Komuro. I've seen many things. Some things I remember, some things I forget, some things I never saw at all. You accept the ginger and let it dissolve slowly on your tongue. The sharp, warm flavor immediately settles your stomach in a way that nothing has for weeks. Taki-san, you say carefully, if someone had timing problems, what would be the wisest course? She doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she busies herself arranging vegetables on a cutting board, her movements practiced and economical. That would depend, she finally says, on what kind of person they are. Some people take risks because they have no choice. Some take risks because they're foolish, and some take risks because they're brave enough to believe they can win. And if they win, they get to write their own story instead of letting the story write them. Before you can ask what she means, footsteps echo in the hallway. Your mama-san's voice calls out, "Where is Hanayuki? She should be preparing by now." Taki moves quickly, pressing another piece of ginger into your hand and whispering, "Go," through the back stairs. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing is not taking any risk at all. You slip up the servant's staircase to your room, your mind racing. 3 pieces of advice now. Okiku's practical information about options. Taki's suggestion that some risks are worth taking, and your own growing realization that doing nothing is also a choice, perhaps the most dangerous one. In your room, you begin the transformation ritual that has defined your life for years. First, the undergarment, soft cotton that will absorb sweat and provide a base layer for the elaborate construction to come. Then the harajuban, a silk undergown that costs more than most people's homes. But tonight, you add something new. Following Okiku's advice, you wrap a long strip of cotton around your midsection, binding it tightly but not so tight that you can't breathe. The binding flattens your stomach and provides support for your back, which has been aching more lately. Next comes the susoyoke, a wraparound skirt that adds fullness to your silhouette. Over that, the nagajuban, another silk undergown with decorative sleeves that will peek out from your final kimono. Each layer is precisely arranged, each fold deliberate. Your kimuro arrives to help with your hair. The process takes 2 hours and involves heated wax, dozens of pins, and more patience than any human should reasonably possess. Tonight you're wearing the shimada style, an elaborate construction that adds nearly a foot to your height and requires your neck muscles to work overtime. As she works, the young girl chatters about the evening's clients. "I heard that Matsudara-sama will be here tonight. The one with the soft hands who always brings expensive incense, and the rice merchant from Osaka, the fat one who laughs too loud but tips well." You listen with half your attention while considering your situation from new angles. Matsudaira is a regular client, a man in his 50s, who treats you with something approaching respect. He's never been rough, never demanded anything unreasonable. If you're going to continue working while pregnant clients like him are manageable. The rice merchant, on the other hand, is enthusiastic in ways that might become problematic as your pregnancy progresses. You'll need to develop strategies for redirecting his energy toward activities that won't put stress on your changing body. "Kamuro-chan," you say as she secures the final pins in your hair. "Have you ever heard the older women talk about medicinal teas?" She pauses in her work. "What kind of medicinal teas?" "Oiran-sama," for stomach troubles. "For women's difficulties." "Oh, yes. Taki-san makes teas like that. She has herbs that help with monthly pains, herbs for headaches, herbs for when your stomach feels unsettled. She taught me about ginger root and mint leaves." "Does she ever help with more serious women's difficulties?" The girl's hands still completely. She's young, but she's not stupid. In houses like this, everyone learns to read between the lines. I think she says carefully that Taki-san helps women with whatever difficulties they have. But I also think she's very careful about who she helps and how she helps them. You nod. Another potential ally, another source of knowledge and support. Your makeup comes next. The white base that transforms your face into a porcelain mask, hiding your natural skin tone and any signs of fatigue or stress. The red and black accents around your eyes that make them appear larger and more dramatic. the carefully painted lips that suggest both innocence and experience. Tonight, you add subtle touches that address your current condition. A bit more powder to counteract the slight pallor that's developed over the past weeks. A slightly rosier tone to your lip color to suggest vibrant health. Tiny adjustments that no one will notice, but that help maintain the illusion of perfection. Finally, the kimono. Tonight's is a masterpiece of silk artistry, deep blue, with patterns of cherry blossoms embroidered in silver thread. It weighs approximately 30 pounds and requires your kamuro's help to arrange properly. The obi, a wide silk sash, is wrapped around your waist and tied in an elaborate bow in the front. The front-tied obi is your professional signature, the visual cue that distinguishes you from geishas and makes your services clear to potential clients. Tonight, it also serves another purpose. The wide silk band provides additional support for your wrapped midsection. As you examine yourself in the mirror, you see what your clients will see: a beautiful, perfectly composed woman who appears to exist solely for their pleasure. The illusion is complete, flawless, and utterly convincing. What they can't see is the woman underneath making desperate calculations about survival. You've made your decision. You're going to attempt Okiku's third option, continuing to work while hiding your pregnancy for as long as possible. It's risky, potentially dangerous, and requires skills you've never had to develop before. But it's also the only choice that gives you control over your own story. The alternative, immediate confession, immediate dismissal, immediate poverty, feels like surrender. And after 15 years in the Yoshiwara, you've learned that surrender is the one luxury you can't afford. Your kamuro steps back to admire her work. You look beautiful tonight, Oiran-sama, like a goddess. If only she knew that this goddess is about to attempt one of the most dangerous deceptions of her life. Thank you, child. Now go help the others. It's almost time. She bows and leaves. You're alone with your reflection and your secret. Time to see just how good an actress you really are. The main parlor of your house is a stage designed to overwhelm the senses. Silk screens painted with scenes of mountain landscapes and flowing rivers divide the space into intimate alcoves. Lanterns cast warm golden light that makes everyone's skin glow. The air is thick with incense sandalwood tonight, expensive and exotic. You make your entrance at precisely the right moment, neither early enough to seem eager, nor late enough to seem disrespectful. Your movements are deliberate, graceful, each step calculated to create the perfect rustling sound as your kimono's layers move against each other. The clients look up as you enter, and you see the familiar expressions: desire, admiration, and something like awe. You've spent years perfecting the ability to command attention without seeming to seek it to be simultaneously available and untouchable. Tonight, maintaining that balance feels more crucial than ever. Matsudaira-sama rises to greet you with a respectful bow. Hanayuki-san, you look especially radiant tonight. You honor me with your presence. Matsudaira-sama, you reply, your voice carrying just the right note of warmth without over-familiarity. As you settle onto the silk cushions arranged around a low table, you're hyper-aware of your body in ways you've never been before. The binding around your midsection is snug but not uncomfortable. Your kimono's multiple layers provide excellent camouflage. Most importantly, the nausea that has plagued you for weeks seems to have settled, perhaps thanks to Taki's ginger. The rice merchant from Osaka, as your Kamuro predicted, is indeed present and already slightly drunk. He raises his sake cup in a toast that's louder than necessary. To the most beautiful woman in Edo, you smile graciously while mentally cataloging his condition. He's the type who becomes more handsy as the evening progresses, which could be problematic. You'll need to manage his attention carefully. The evening follows familiar patterns. Conversation flows around topics of poetry, politics, and business. You pour sake with practiced elegance, laugh at jokes that aren't particularly funny, and demonstrate your skills at shamisen, the three-stringed instrument that's been your companion for years. But tonight you're also conducting an experiment in deception. Every movement, every word, every glance is designed to maintain the illusion that nothing has changed. You're the same Hanayuki who has graced this parlor for years, beautiful, accomplished, and seemingly existing solely for their pleasure. The challenge comes when the rice merchant, emboldened by alcohol and your apparent attention, becomes more aggressive in his advances. His hand finds your knee, then slides higher, testing boundaries. In your previous life, which is how you now think of the time before pregnancy, you would have handled this with subtle redirection, perhaps guiding his hand to your shamisen to request a song, or suggesting a game that required him to use both hands. Tonight, you're concerned about pressure on your abdomen, about positions that might be uncomfortable or dangerous. You need to redirect without making it obvious that you're redirecting for physical reasons. Osaka-san, you say with a gentle smile, I've been told you have an excellent singing voice. Would you honor us with a song? It's a masterful deflection. He's flattered by the request, distracted from his physical advances, and now the center of attention in a way that feeds his ego. His hand moves away from your body as he puffs up with pride. I do know a song about cherry blossoms, he says, swaying slightly. As he begins an off-key rendition of a popular folk song, you catch Matsudaira's eye. He's watching you with an expression you can't quite read, intelligent, perhaps slightly amused by your handling of the situation. Skillfully done, he murmurs quietly, so only you can hear. You incline your head slightly in acknowledgement. Matsudaira has always been observant, which makes him both a valuable client and a potential danger. Men who pay close attention might notice changes that others miss. The evening progresses through several more rounds of sake music and conversation. You eat lightly a few pieces of pickled radish, some rice, claiming that you prefer to focus on ensuring your guests are well fed. In reality, anything more substantial makes your stomach rebel. By the time the evening wanes down, you've successfully navigated several potentially difficult moments. The rice merchant is too drunk to be physically aggressive. Matsudaira is pleased with your attention and conversation, and the other clients seem satisfied with the evening's entertainment. But the real test comes when individual clients begin requesting private time. Matsudaira approaches you as the group begins to disperse. Hanayuki-san, might I request your company for tea in a more intimate setting? Your heart rate increases, but your expression remains serene. Of course, Matsudaira-sama, it would be my pleasure. He's a regular client, which means you know his preferences and habits. He's gentle, predictable, and unlikely to request anything that would put physical stress on your changing body. If you're going to continue working while pregnant, clients like him are your safest option. You lead him to one of the smaller rooms on the second floor, a private space with silk-covered futons, low tables for tea service, and screens that can be arranged for complete privacy. The room is beautiful, designed to feel like a sanctuary removed from the ordinary world. As you prepare tea with precise, graceful movements, Matsudaira watches quietly. He's in his 50s with graying hair and intelligent eyes. Unlike many clients, he seems genuinely interested in you as a person, not just as a fantasy. You seem thoughtful tonight, he observes, as you pour tea into delicate porcelain cups. The change of seasons always makes me reflective. You reply. It's not entirely a lie. Your life is certainly changing, even if not in the way he might interpret. And what do your reflections tell you? You consider your words carefully, that life is more fragile and more precious than we often realize, that each day we must choose how to meet whatever challenges arise. He nods thoughtfully. Wise words. And what challenges are you meeting these days? The question is casual, but something in his tone suggests deeper interest. You set down your teacup and study his face. The usual challenges of a woman in my position: maintaining grace under scrutiny, finding genuine moments of connection in a world of performance, ensuring that I remain valuable to those who matter. And do you feel valued by some? Yes. By others, you allow a small, enigmatic smile. Others see only what they wish to see. And what do I see when I look at you? The conversation has taken an unexpectedly personal turn. You're used to clients who want to talk about themselves, their problems, their desires. Matsudaira's genuine curiosity about your inner life is both refreshing and dangerous. You see someone trying to navigate a complicated world with as much dignity as possible. You answer honestly. Yes, he agrees. I do see that. I also see someone who is managing some new difficulty, something that requires careful attention and perhaps some creative solutions. Your blood runs cold. Does he know? Has he guessed Matsudaira-sama? I'm not sure I understand. He sets down his teacup and leans back slightly, his expression kind but serious. Hanayuki-san, I've been visiting this house for 5 years. I've watched you develop from a talented young woman into someone truly remarkable. I noticed changes. You maintain your composed expression, but inside panic is rising. What changes do you perceive? Small things. The way you've been eating or not eating over the past month. The subtle adjustments in how you arrange your kimono. The fact that you've been declining certain activities that you previously enjoyed. He knows, or at least suspects strongly enough to mention it. I notice these things, he continues, because I care about your well-being, and because I'm wondering if there's a way I might be of assistance. The words hang in the air between you. This is the moment where everything could change, where your secret becomes known, where your carefully constructed life either crumbles or finds unexpected support. What kind of assistance might you have in mind, you ask carefully. The kind that ensures a remarkable woman continues to have choices about her own life. You study his face, looking for signs of deception, manipulation, or hidden agendas. What you see instead is something you've rarely encountered in the Yoshiwara: genuine concern for your welfare without apparent expectation of personal benefit. Such assistance would be unusual, you say. Unusual situations require unusual solutions. You take a breath, weighing risks against possibilities. The secret you've been carrying alone is exhausting. The calculations, the constant vigilance, the fear of discovery, all of it could be easier with an ally. But trusting the wrong person could destroy everything. If someone were in a delicate situation, you say slowly, what kind of assistance might be most valuable? Financial security, discretion, perhaps alternative arrangements that provide safety and dignity regardless of changing circumstances. And what would motivate someone to provide such assistance? Respect for an exceptional woman, belief that some people deserve better choices than the world typically offers them. You sit in silence for a long moment, considering. Then you make a decision that feels both terrifying and liberating. Matsudaira-sama, if I were to tell you that your perceptions are accurate, what would happen next? Next, we would discuss practical matters, how to ensure your continued safety and comfort, how to manage the situation so that you retain as much control as possible over your own story. And in return, you would expect your continued companionship when and as you choose to provide it. Nothing more, nothing less. It's an extraordinary offer. In a world where women like you are essentially property, someone is offering to treat you as a person with agency over your own life. I would need time to consider such an arrangement. Of course. But Hanayuki-san, whatever you decide, please know that your secret is safe. I have no interest in causing you harm. You bow formally, deeply grateful for the first time in months. Your discretion and kindness honor me, Matsudaira-sama. As the evening concludes and he prepares to leave, you realize that your experiment in deception has yielded an unexpected result. Instead of successfully hiding your pregnancy, you found yourself in a position where honesty might actually be safer than continued secrecy. Sometimes the most dangerous risk is the one that leads to salvation. 3 days pass before you see Matsudaira again. During this time, you continue your careful performance, binding your midsection each morning, eating small amounts of ginger to settle your stomach, and managing your evening clients with increasing skill at redirection and subtle manipulation. But his offer weighs on your mind constantly. The possibility of having an ally, someone who knows your secret and offers protection rather than exploitation, seems almost too good to be true. In your experience, men who frequent the Yoshiwara always want something in return for their generosity. When he returns, you're performing for a group of merchants celebrating a successful rice harvest. Your shamisen playing has improved remarkably over the past few days, partly because you've been practicing more, but mostly because the subtle nausea that once made concentration difficult has largely subsided thanks to Taki's herbal remedies. Matsudaira watches from across the room as you navigate the evening's entertainment. The merchants are jovial, well-behaved, and sufficiently impressed by your musical skills that they're content to listen rather than make increasingly inappropriate requests for physical attention. When the evening winds down, he approaches with his usual respectful manner. Hanayuki-san, might we continue our previous conversation? You lead him to the same private room, but tonight the atmosphere feels different. You're no longer carrying the secret alone, and that changes everything about how you move through the space. Have you considered my offer, he asks, once you've settled with tea? I have, and I find myself curious about the practical details of such an arrangement. He nods, as if he's been preparing for this conversation. The most immediate concern is maintaining your health and safety while you continue working. I assume you intend to continue for as long as possible. Yes. The alternative is immediate dismissal and poverty. Then you'll need allies within the house, reliable sources of appropriate food and remedies and strategies for managing clients who might become problematic as your condition progresses. The clinical way he discusses your pregnancy is oddly comforting. No shame, no judgment, just practical problem solving. I've already identified some potential allies, you tell him. Taki-san in the kitchen has been helpful with remedies for nausea, and my Komuro is discreet and observant. Good. You'll also need to begin setting aside money. Not just your usual savings, but funds specifically for future arrangements. What kind of arrangements? When the time comes that you can no longer work, you'll need somewhere to go. I own a small house outside the city near a village where my family has connections. It's modest, but comfortable, and the people there are accustomed to asking few questions about temporary residence. You set down your teacup, trying to process what he's offering. You would provide sanctuary. I would provide options. The house could be yours for as long as needed. After everything is resolved, you could return to work if you choose or pursue other possibilities. Other possibilities. A woman with your intelligence and skills could teach music, serve as a companion to a wealthy family, even run a small business. The Yoshiwara isn't the only way to survive. The idea of life beyond the pleasure district is so foreign that you can barely imagine it. You've been here since you were 6 years old. This floating world is the only reality you know. And what would you expect from me during this time? Your company when possible, your conversation when you're able to provide it, and perhaps the opportunity to be part of something meaningful instead of just another transaction. There's something in his voice that suggests this arrangement means more to him than simple charity or even desire for your companionship. Matsudara-sama, may I ask why you're offering this, truly? He's quiet for a long moment, staring into his teacup. When he speaks, his voice is softer than usual. 20 years ago, I had a daughter. She was intelligent, beautiful, full of life. When she reached a certain age, my family arranged a marriage for her, a good match, financially advantageous, completely appropriate by society's standards. You wait, sensing there's more to this story. She was unhappy in the marriage. Her husband was unkind. When she became pregnant, he was even worse. She had no choices, no allies, no way to control her own circumstances. She died in childbirth, but I believe she died long before that she died, when she realized she had no power over her own life. The grief in his voice is unmistakable, even after 20 years. I can't bring her back, he continues. But when I see a woman facing impossible circumstances with courage and intelligence, I remember her. And I think, maybe I can ensure that this time someone has choices. You sit in silence, moved by his honesty and the unexpected depth of his motivation. I'm honored by your trust in sharing that story, you say finally, and I'm grateful for your offer. But I need you to understand, I don't know what will happen. I don't know if I can successfully hide this pregnancy or how long I can continue working, or whether any of your plans will be possible. Life is uncertain, he agrees, but having plans makes uncertainty more manageable. Then yes, I accept your offer of assistance. He bows formally. I'm honored by your trust. Over the following weeks, your life develops a strange double nature. By day and evening, you continue your role as Hanayuki, the Oiran. Beautiful, accomplished, seemingly existing solely for others' pleasure. But underneath, you're now part of a careful conspiracy designed to protect your secret and ensure your survival. Matsudara becomes a regular presence, visiting every few days. To outside observers, he appears to be a devoted client who has developed a particular attachment to you. In reality, your private meetings often involve practical discussions about money timeline planning and strategy adjustments. Taki proves to be an invaluable ally. She provides a steady supply of ginger and other herbs that help with nausea, introduces foods that provide nutrition without being obvious about it, and shares wisdom gained from years of observing women in similar situations. The binding you're using is good, she tells you one afternoon when you visit the kitchen for ginger tea. But as you grow larger, you'll need different techniques. I can show you how to wrap in ways that provide support without restricting blood flow. She also helps you develop strategies for managing your changing appetite and energy levels. Eat small amounts frequently rather than normal meals, she advises. Tell people you're following a special diet for spiritual purification. Men find that kind of dedication impressive rather than suspicious. Your Kamuro, meanwhile, becomes your early warning system. She's young enough that adult conversations often happen around her as if she's invisible, which means she overhears useful information. Mama-san was talking to the house accountant about which girls are most profitable. She reports one evening while arranging your hair. Your name was mentioned as one of the most valuable. I think that's good for your situation. Being valuable provides some protection. A profitable Oiran receives more consideration, more patience with small eccentricities, and more benefit of the doubt when minor irregularities arise. But it also increases scrutiny. When you're worth significant money to the house, people pay closer attention to your health, your behavior, and your earning potential. By your 4th month of pregnancy, you've developed routines that feel almost natural. The morning binding, the careful food choices, the strategic positioning during client entertainment, All of it has become second nature. You've also become remarkably skilled at reading clients and steering interactions toward activities that are comfortable for your changing body. Poetry discussions instead of physical demands. Musical performances that require sitting rather than standing. Conversations that can be conducted while reclining rather than in positions that put pressure on your abdomen. But you're also aware that time is running out. Each week brings new challenges, new risks of discovery, and new physical limitations that require creative solutions. The most dangerous moment comes during a house inspection. Once a month, a government official visits to ensure that the establishment is operating within legal guidelines. These inspections are formal affairs. The Oiran line up in their finest kimono bow respectfully and submit to visual examination to confirm they're healthy and properly presented. Usually these inspections are routine. The official nods approvingly at the house's obvious prosperity and the women's beauty and moves on quickly. This month, however, the inspector seems more thorough. He walks slowly down the line of women, examining each one carefully. When he reaches you, he pauses. "This one looks different," he says, to your mama-san. "Has she been ill?" Your heart pounds, but you maintain perfect composure. The binding you're wearing is tighter than usual. Your kimono is arranged to add visual bulk through the shoulders and hips, and your face paint is applied to suggest vibrant health. Hanayuki-san has been following a purification diet. Your mama-san responds smoothly. She believes it enhances her spiritual discipline and artistic inspiration. The inspector nods, apparently satisfied by this explanation. Religious and spiritual practices are respected even when they result in slight physical changes. But as he moves on, you catch your mama-san's eye. There's a question there, a slight narrowing of her gaze that suggests she's beginning to wonder about your recent behavior changes. After the inspection, she requests a private meeting. Your mama-san is a formidable woman in her 60s who built this house from nothing through a combination of business acumen, political connections, and an almost supernatural ability to read people. She survived in a dangerous profession by being observant, calculating, and ruthlessly practical. "Sit down, Hanayuki-san," she says, once you're alone in her private quarters. Her room reflects her success, expensive furniture, valuable artwork, and an overall atmosphere of wealth and refinement. But it's also clearly a workspace with account books, correspondence, and business documents arranged on low tables. "You've been my most profitable Oiran for 3 years," she begins. "Your earnings are consistent, your clients are loyal, and your reputation brings prestige to this house." You bow respectfully, uncertain where this conversation is heading. "However, I've noticed some changes recently. Your eating habits, your preference for certain types of client entertainment, your requests for schedule adjustments. Individually, these things are minor. Collectively, they suggest something is happening that I should know about. The moment of truth has arrived sooner than you hoped. Your careful deception has been good enough to fool clients and government inspectors, but not good enough to fool a woman who has spent decades managing women in your profession." "Mama-san." She holds up a hand to stop you. "Before you speak, let me tell you what I know. I know that you've been meeting regularly with Matsudaira-san in ways that seem more like consultations than entertainment. I know that Taki has been providing you with herbal remedies beyond her usual offerings, and I know that your body is changing in ways that suggest a condition that could affect your ability to work. There's no point in denying what she's already figured out. Yes, Mama-san, I am with child." She nods as if confirming something she's already concluded. "How long? 4 months. And how long did you think you could hide it as long as possible? To what end? What was your plan when concealment became impossible?" You take a breath and make a decision to be completely honest. Matsudara-san has offered assistance, a place to stay during the final month's support for afterwards, and the possibility of returning to work when circumstances allow. Your mama-san considers this information carefully. Matsudara-san is wealthy, reliable, and discreet. His offer is more generous than most women in your situation could expect. Yes, mama-san, however your condition presents problems for this house. Clients pay for the fantasy of availability. Pregnancy, regardless of how well concealed, is fundamentally incompatible with that fantasy. You nod, understanding that your time here is now limited, but she continues, "You are also my most valuable woman. Losing you permanently would be costly. So I propose an alternative arrangement." Hope flickers in your chest. You will continue working for as long as safely possible, perhaps another month, possibly 6 weeks, if you're careful. During that time, we'll begin telling clients that you're considering a temporary retirement for spiritual study. When you can no longer work, you'll leave for your spiritual retreat with my blessing and the understanding that your position here will be held for your return. And the child. The child will be placed with a farming family who can provide a good life. Matsudara-san's connections should make this arrangement both safe and permanent. It's a better outcome than you dared hope for. Your mama-san is offering a path that preserves your reputation, protects the house's interests, and provides a future that includes returning to work if you choose. The conditions, she continues, are that you maintain perfect discretion, that no clients ever suspect the truth, and that when you return, you resume your duties without any lingering emotional complications about what happened during your absence. The last condition is the cruelest, but also the most necessary. In your world, maternal feelings are a luxury that can destroy everything you've worked to build. I understand and accept your conditions, mama-san. Good. Now let's discuss the practical details of making this transition as smooth as possible. As you leave her quarters an hour later, you realize that your dangerous gamble has succeeded beyond your wildest expectations. You're not just surviving your pregnancy, you're managing it in a way that preserves your future options, but you're also keenly aware that the most difficult part lies ahead. The next few weeks will require performing at a level that makes your previous deceptions look simple by comparison. You'll need to be the perfect Oiran, while your body undergoes changes that make perfection increasingly impossible. Your last month of work becomes a masterclass in controlled illusion. Every morning you wake before dawn to assess your body's changes and determine what adjustments are needed for the day ahead. The binding around your midsection is now more complex, involving multiple strips of cotton wrapped in patterns that Taki has taught you. Too tight and you risk fainting during performances. Too loose and the growing roundness of your stomach becomes visible even through layers of silk. Your face has begun to show the subtle changes that accompany pregnancy. A fullness in your cheeks, a different quality to your skin. But these changes, skillfully managed with makeup, actually make you appear more radiant. Several clients comment on your glow, attributing it to spiritual purification rather than the life growing inside you. The most challenging aspect isn't physical concealment, it's emotional endurance. Each day brings you closer to a separation that you can't allow yourself to think about too deeply. The child you're carrying will never know you as anything more than the woman who gave birth to them. Your role as mother will last exactly as long as it takes to recover from delivery. Matsudara continues his regular visits, but now your private meetings focus on practical preparations for what's to come. The midwife I've arranged is experienced and discreet. He tells you one evening. She's delivered children for several women in unconventional circumstances. She asks no questions and keeps no records. And the family who will take the child farmers about a day's journey from the city, they're prosperous enough to provide well, but not so wealthy as to attract attention. They've raised children from similar arrangements before. You nod, trying to process these details without thinking too deeply about their implications. They understand that this is a permanent arrangement, completely. As far as the child will know, they are the only parents they've ever had. It's the kindest solution available, but that doesn't make it easy to accept. Your final weeks of performance require every skill you've developed over years of training. You're now visibly pregnant to anyone who knows what to look for, but the elaborate costumes of an oiran provide excellent camouflage when arranged by someone who understands the challenge. Taki becomes your collaborator in an increasingly complex daily routine. She's developed special wrapping techniques that provide support without showing created modified versions of your usual kimono that accommodate your changing shape and even adjusted the way your obi is tied to create visual misdirection. The key, she explains as she helps you dress for what will be your final public performance, is to make the eye see what it expects to see. Men who come to the Yoshiwara expect to see a beautiful, slim woman. If you give them beauty and elegance, they won't look closely enough to notice the rest. Tonight's performance is special, a seasonal celebration that draws the district's most important clients. You'll be performing solo dancing and playing shamisen for an audience that includes government officials, wealthy merchants, and foreign dignitaries. It's the kind of performance that can enhance a reputation for years or destroy it in a single evening. As you take your position in the main parlor, kneeling gracefully before the assembled guests, you're aware that this is likely the last time you'll perform as Hanayuki, the oiran. In a few days, you'll begin your spiritual retreat, and when you return, if you return, you'll be a different person. The shamisen feels familiar in your hands, its 3 strings responsive to your touch. You begin with a classical piece, something beautiful and melancholy that showcases your technical skill. The room falls silent, except for the instrument's haunting voice. As you play, you let yourself fully inhabit the role one final time. You are the perfect oiran, beautiful, talented, mysterious, existing solely to provide pleasure and inspiration to the men who watch you. The performance is flawless, each note precise, each movement graceful. But underneath the performance, you're also saying goodbye to this life, to this identity, to the woman you've been for 15 years. When the music ends, the applause is immediate and enthusiastic. You bow deeply, accepting their appreciation with the same serene smile you've perfected over years of practice. An older man in expensive robes, a government official judging by his clothing, approaches with a sake cup. Hanayuki-san, your performance tonight has been extraordinary. Truly, you are a treasure of our culture. You honor me beyond my worth, you reply, accepting the cup with practiced grace. I understand you're considering a period of spiritual study, he continues. A woman of your refinement dedicating time to deepening her understanding of our traditions. It's admirable. I feel called to explore the philosophical foundations that give meaning to artistic expression. You respond. It's a carefully crafted explanation that sounds sufficiently intellectual to satisfy curious questioners. And when might we expect your return? When my studies have reached their natural conclusion? Perhaps in a year, perhaps longer. These things cannot be rushed. He nods approvingly. Dedication to spiritual growth is the mark of a truly cultivated person. As the evening winds down, you move through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes for your upcoming retreat. Everyone seems pleased by your decision to pursue spiritual development, viewing it as evidence of your sophisticated character, rather than suspecting any other motivation. Matsudaira is among the last to approach. In public, he maintains the respectful distance appropriate to a valued client. But when he takes his leave, he murmurs quietly, "Everything is prepared when you're ready." 3 days later, you wake before dawn for the last time in the room that has been your home for most of your adult life. Your few personal possessions are packed in a small bundle, some jewelry, a book of poetry, a hair ornament that was a gift from your first regular client. You dress in plain clothing, suitable for travel without the elaborate makeup and hairstyling that have defined your public appearance. Looking in the mirror, you see a woman you barely recognize, younger, somehow more vulnerable, completely ordinary. Taki has prepared food for your journey and a supply of herbs for the weeks ahead. Remember, she says as she hands you the packages, ginger for nausea, raspberry leaf tea in the final month to ease labor, and these, she indicates, a small vial of dark liquid only if things go badly and you need them to. You understand. The vial contains a final option if the birth goes wrong and pain becomes unbearable. Your Kamuro, now nearly old enough to begin her own training as an Oiran, helps carry your bundle to the servant's entrance where Matsudaira waits with a covered palanquin. "Will you come back?" she asks quietly. "I don't know," you answer honestly. "But if I do, things will be different." She nods, trying to look grown up despite the tears in her eyes. The palanquin ride through the pre-dawn city feels like traveling between worlds. You're leaving behind the only life you've known, carrying secrets that could destroy everything if revealed, heading toward an uncertain future that depends on the kindness of people you've never met. But for the first time in months, you also feel something like relief. The constant performance is over. The daily deception has ended. Whatever happens next, it will be real in ways that your life in the Yoshiwara never could be. The house where you'll spend the next few months is modest, but comfortable: 2 rooms, a small garden, and a kitchen equipped with everything necessary for simple living. The village nearby is small enough that everyone knows everyone else's business, but also traditional enough that people respect privacy when it's clearly desired. The midwife who will attend your birth lives close enough to reach quickly, but far enough away to maintain discretion. The farming family who will take your child are known to Matsudaira's family as trustworthy people who ask few questions about the children who occasionally come into their care. Everything has been arranged to give you the best possible chance of surviving this transition with your health, your reputation, and your future options intact. Now all you have to do is wait and hope that when the time comes, you'll be strong enough to do what needs to be done. The most dangerous risk you've ever taken is almost over. Whether it ends in triumph or tragedy remains to be seen. Winter settles over the countryside like a heavy silk coverlet, muffling sounds and transforming the landscape into something ethereal and strange. Your temporary home becomes a world unto itself, 2 rooms where you move through daily routines that bear no resemblance to your previous life. No elaborate kimono, no face paint, no performances. Instead, you wear simple cotton robes and focus on the basic tasks of survival, maintaining the fire, preparing simple meals, and managing the increasingly dramatic changes in your body. By your 7th month, concealment is no longer possible, even in private. Your stomach has grown round and prominent, your movements have become careful and deliberate, and the child inside you has developed a personality of its own, active during your attempts to rest, quiet when you're trying to feel reassured by movement. The midwife, a woman named Sato, who looks to be in her 60s, visits weekly to check your health and prepare for the birth. She's matter-of-fact about your situation in ways that are both comforting and unsettling. "You're carrying well," she observes during one visit, pressing her experienced hands against your abdomen to assess the child's position. Strong heartbeat, good size. This should be a straightforward birth. And afterward, you ask. Afterward, you rest for 2 weeks, let your body begin to heal, and then you go back to your life. The child goes to its new family, and you pretend none of this ever happened. The clinical simplicity of her plan is both reassuring and heartbreaking. Matsudaira visits every few weeks, bringing supplies and news from the city. During one of these visits, he shares information that changes everything. There's been an incident at your house, he tells you as you share tea in your small sitting room. A fire in the kitchen. No one was seriously hurt, but the damage was extensive enough that they've had to close temporarily for repairs. How does this affect my situation? It means your spiritual retreat can be extended indefinitely without questions. When you're ready to return, if you're ready to return, the story will be that you continued your studies until the house reopened. The fire is simultaneously a disaster and a stroke of luck. It provides perfect cover for an extended absence while ensuring that your position will be available when you're ready to reclaim it. But as your pregnancy progresses, you find yourself questioning whether you want to return to that life at all. The woman you were before Hanayuki, the Oiran feels increasingly like a character you once played rather than your true self. Here in this simple house, you've discovered aspects of your personality that had no place in the Yoshiwara. You enjoy the quiet satisfaction of maintaining a home, the meditative quality of simple tasks, the absence of constant performance pressure. You've also had time to think about your future in ways that were impossible when every day was consumed by the demands of professional seduction. What would happen, you ask Matsudaira during one visit, if I chose not to return to the pleasure district? He considers the question carefully. That would depend on what you chose to do instead. You have skills, music conversation, an understanding of etiquette and aesthetics. There are families who would value a cultured woman as a companion or governess. There are tea houses that employ women who can entertain customers without additional obligations. Would such work provide sufficient income? Not the extravagant income of an Oiran, but enough for a comfortable life, especially if supplemented by occasional assistance from someone who has become invested in your welfare. The conversation is interrupted by a sudden, intense pain that radiates from your lower back around to your abdomen. You gasp, gripping the edge of the low table for support. The birth begins. Matsudaira says, immediately shifting from friend to practical helper. I'll send for the midwife. The next 24 hours blur together in a haze of pain effort and strange moments of transcendent clarity. Labor, you discover, is unlike anything you could have imagined, simultaneously more brutal and more natural than expected. Sato arrives within an hour and takes charge with the calm efficiency of someone who has attended hundreds of births. She transforms your simple bedroom into a delivery room, boiling water, arranging clean cloths, and preparing the tools of her trade. First babies often take their time, she explains as another contraction grips you. Try to rest between pains. You'll need your strength for what's coming. The pain comes in waves that seem to follow their own mysterious rhythm. Between contractions, you experience moments of profound quiet where the world seems suspended waiting. During contractions, your entire universe narrows to the immediate necessity of breathing, enduring, surrendering to forces completely beyond your control. Matsudaira remains nearby, ready to help, but respectfully staying outside the bedroom where Sato works, with practiced competence. His presence is oddly comforting proof that you're not facing this alone, that someone cares about your survival beyond mere professional interest. As the hours pass, the pain intensifies, but also becomes more purposeful. You can feel your body working towards something, preparing for a change that will transform everything. I can see the head, Sato announces suddenly. A few more pushes, and you'll meet your child. The final stage of labor requires every ounce of strength and determination you possess. The pain is overwhelming, but it's also productive. Each contraction brings you closer to the end of this ordeal and the beginning of whatever comes next. When your child finally emerges, a girl small but perfect with dark hair and lungs that announce her arrival to the world, you experience a moment of pure, unexpected joy. For just a few seconds, you allow yourself to feel what any mother would feel: wonder, protectiveness, overwhelming love for this tiny person you've carried for so long. Then reality reasserts itself. She's beautiful, Sato says, cleaning the baby efficiently before wrapping her in soft cotton. Healthy and strong. She'll thrive with her new family. The midwife places the child in your arms for just a moment, long enough for you to memorize her face, to whisper a silent blessing, to say goodbye to the part of yourself that could have been her mother. Then she takes the baby back, and that part of your life is over. Rest now, Sato instructs. Your body needs time to heal. In 2 weeks, you'll be ready to make decisions about what comes next. As you drift into exhausted sleep, you realize that surviving your pregnancy was only the first challenge. Now you need to decide who you want to become in the life that stretches ahead, a life where you have choices you never expected to possess. The most dangerous risk you ever took has led you to a place you never imagined: freedom. 2 weeks after giving birth, you sit in the garden of your temporary home watching snow fall on bare tree branches. Your body is healing well. Sato pronounced you recovered enough for normal activities, though she warns that full strength will take months to return. Physically, you feel surprisingly good. Emotionally, you exist in a strange state of suspension, as if you're waiting for your real life to begin. The child you've forbidden yourself to think of her as your daughter is settled with her new family. Matsudaira brought word yesterday that she's thriving, feeding well, and already bringing joy to the farmers who will raise her as their own. You're happy for her. You're also grieving in ways you didn't expect. The house repairs are nearly complete, Matsudaira tells you during his latest visit. Your mama-san has been asking when you might return from your spiritual retreat. And what have you told her? That spiritual growth cannot be rushed, but that you remain committed to your studies. You sip tea and consider your options. Returning to the Yoshiwara would mean reclaiming your position as Hanayuki, resuming the life of performance and careful deception that you mastered so completely. The income would be substantial, the work familiar, and your reputation intact. But you've discovered something during these months of simple living: you're capable of being someone other than an oiran. I've been thinking about your suggestion regarding other types of work, you say. And what conclusions have you reached? That I would like to explore possibilities that don't require quite so much performance. He nods thoughtfully. I may have an opportunity that would interest you. A wealthy widow in the capital is seeking a cultured companion, someone who can provide conversation, assist with correspondence, and help entertain guests. The position would include private quarters, respectable income, and considerable independence. What kind of woman is she? Intelligent, unconventional, and discreet about her employees' backgrounds. She's more interested in your abilities than your history. It sounds almost too good to be true. When would such a position begin? Whenever you're ready. She's in no hurry to fill the role. She'd rather wait for the right person than settle for someone merely adequate. You sit quietly watching snow accumulate on the garden stones. A month ago, your entire future seemed predetermined. Return to the pleasure district, resume your career as an oiran, continue the life of beautiful performance until age or circumstances forced retirement. Now you have choices you never expected to possess. There's something else you should consider. Matsudaira continues. If you take this position, there would be opportunities to Occasionally visit the farming village where your child is growing up. Not as her mother, of course, but perhaps as a family friend who takes interest in the children's education. The possibility of maintaining some distant connection to your daughter hadn't occurred to you. It would be painful seeing her grow up without being able to claim any relationship beyond casual friendship. But it would also mean knowing she's well watching her develop, having some small role in her life. That would be meaningful to me. I thought it might be. You make your decision with the same careful consideration you once applied to managing difficult clients or navigating house politics. I would like to explore this opportunity with the widow. If it proves suitable for both of us, I think I'm ready to become someone other than Hanayuki. And if your mama-san objects to your permanent departure, then we'll need to have a conversation about the true nature of my spiritual studies and what I learned during my retreat. 3 days later, you leave the countryside house where you've spent the most transformative months of your adult life. But instead of returning to the Yoshiwara, you travel to the capital to meet the woman who might employ you in your new identity. The widow Madame Ishida is in her 50s, with intelligent eyes and an air of quiet authority. Her house is elegant but not ostentatious, filled with books, artwork, and evidence of a mind that values culture and learning. Matsudaira-san speaks very highly of your abilities, she says during your interview. He tells me you're well educated, articulate, and experienced in managing complex social situations. I've had extensive training in music, poetry, and etiquette, you reply carefully, and considerable experience in entertaining diverse groups of people. She smiles slightly, and you suspect she understands more about your background than she's stating directly. The position I'm offering involves serving as my companion and assistant. You would help with correspondence, accompany me to social events, and assist when I entertain guests. You would have your own quarters, considerable freedom, and a salary that should provide comfortable independence. And what would you expect regarding discretion about my previous circumstances? I would expect you to be the intelligent, capable woman Matsudaira-san described. Your past is your own business, as long as it doesn't interfere with your current responsibilities. The interview continues for another hour, during which you discuss literature, music, and current events. By the end of the conversation, you're confident that this opportunity represents exactly the kind of life you want to build. When could you begin? Madame Ishida asks. Immediately, if you're satisfied with our discussion. I am. Welcome to your new life, Yuki-san. The name change is subtle but significant. No longer Hanayuki, the Oiran. You become simply Yuki. Snow, a name that suggests freshness, purity, new beginnings. That evening you write 2 letters. The first is to your mama-san, explaining that your spiritual studies have led you to pursue a different path. You express gratitude for her guidance and protection offered to compensate the house for any lost investment in your training and formally request release from your obligations. You're careful to phrase everything in terms that preserve everyone's dignity while making clear that your decision is final. The second letter is to Taki, thanking her for her kindness and discretion and letting her know that you're safe and well settled in a new life. You don't mention the specific nature of your spiritual revelation or the practical details of your transition. Some secrets are best kept. 6 months later, you're established in your new role and discovering aspects of yourself that had no outlet in your previous life. You help Madame Ishida manage her correspondence with merchant scholars and government officials. You accompany her to tea ceremonies, where your musical skills and understanding of etiquette prove invaluable. You assist when she entertains guests who appreciate intelligent conversation more than physical beauty. Most surprisingly, you're happy. The work is challenging in ways that engage your mind rather than simply your ability to please. Your living quarters are modest but private, a room where you can read, think, and exist without performing. Your income is less than what you earned as an oiran, but it's yours without conditions or complicated obligations. Best of all, every few months you make trips to the farming village where your daughter is growing up. Officially, these visits are to check on business interests that Madame Ishida has in the region. Unofficially, they give you opportunities to see the child who carries part of your heart. She's walking now, a sturdy toddler with bright eyes and an adventurous spirit. Her adoptive parents call her May, and she's clearly beloved by the entire farming family. When you visit, you're introduced as a family friend from the capital, someone who takes interest in the children's welfare and education. You bring small gifts, books, hair ribbons, toys that are appropriate but not so expensive as to raise questions. You teach her simple songs and watch her play with other village children. You memorize everything about her growth and development, storing these observations like precious treasures. It's both wonderful and heartbreaking. You get to know your daughter while being unable to claim any relationship beyond casual friendship. But it's infinitely better than having no connection at all. During one of these visits, May approaches you with the fearless curiosity of a 3-year-old. Yuki-san, why do you always look sad when you smile, she asks. The question catches you completely off guard. Children, you realize, see things that adults miss. Sometimes, you tell her carefully, people smile because they're happy and sad at the same time. Happy to see someone they care about sad because they can't stay longer. She considers this explanation with the seriousness that small children bring to important matters. Will you come back, she asks. Yes, you promise. I'll always come back. It's a commitment you intend to keep for as long as circumstances allow. 3 years have passed since you left the Yoshiwara, and your life has settled into patterns that would have been unimaginable during your years as an oiran. You wake each morning in your own room, dress in clothes chosen for comfort and practicality rather than seduction, and spend your days engaged in work that exercises your intelligence rather than your ability to maintain illusions. Madame Ishida has become more than an employer. She's a mentor and friend who has helped you develop skills you never knew you possessed. Under her guidance, you've learned to manage business correspondence, coordinate social events, and navigate political conversations with people who have real power beyond the artificial authority of the pleasure districts. You've also discovered that your years in the Yoshiwara, despite their challenges, provided valuable preparation for this new life. Your ability to read people, to manage complex social dynamics, and to maintain composure under pressure, all skills you developed as a courtesan, prove remarkably useful in legitimate business contexts. You have a gift for making people feel heard and valued. Madame Ishida observes one afternoon as you're reviewing plans for an upcoming gathering of merchants and government officials. It's a rare ability and a valuable one. You've never thought of your professional training in these terms, but you're beginning to understand that many of the skills required for survival in the floating world translate well to other environments. Your relationship with Matsudaira has also evolved. He continues to visit regularly, but the dynamic has shifted from protector and protected to something more like genuine friendship. He takes obvious pleasure in your successful transition to a new life, and you appreciate having someone who understands your full history without judgment. I have news from the Yoshiwara, he tells you during one of his visits. Your former house has fully reopened after the fire repairs. Business is thriving, and your mama-san sends her regards along with a question. What kind of question? She wants to know if you would consider returning for special occasions, important clients, seasonal celebrations, particularly prestigious events. Not as a full-time oiran, but as an honored guest performer. The offer is both flattering and tempting. It would provide substantial income for relatively little time investment, and it would allow you to maintain connections to a world that shaped you profoundly. But you've also moved beyond the need to define yourself through others' desires. Please thank her for the honor of such an invitation, you say. But I think my performing days are behind me. Matsudaira nods approvingly. I thought you might say that. You found something better than performance. You found authenticity. Your visits to see May have become the highlight of your seasonal routine. She's now 5 years old, bright and curious, with a personality that combines stubborn independence with surprising sensitivity. Her adoptive parents have provided exactly the kind of stable, loving home that you hoped for, and she shows no signs of feeling anything missing from her life. During your most recent visit, she demonstrated her ability to write her own name and proudly showed you a small garden plot where she's growing vegetables. Mama says I'm responsible for the radishes, she explains seriously. If I take good care of them, they'll feed the whole family. Watching her tend her tiny garden with careful attention, you see echoes of your own personality, the same focus, the same desire to do things well, the same satisfaction in completing necessary tasks. You're doing excellent work, you tell her. Your radishes are lucky to have such a dedicated gardener. She beams with pride, and for a moment you allow yourself to imagine what it would have been like to raise her yourself, to be the one teaching her about responsibility and helping her develop confidence in her abilities. But you also recognize that the life she has is better than anything you could have provided. Her adoptive parents love her without reservation, give her security without secrets, and offer her a future free from the complications that would have followed her as the daughter of a former courtesan. Your choice to let her go was the right one, even if it remains painful. As your visit concludes and you prepare to return to the capital, May runs up to you with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. For you, she says, pressing the package into your hands. So you remember us when you're far away. Inside the cloth is a single perfect radish from her garden, still fragrant with earth and possibility. Thank you, you say, touched by the simple generosity of the gift. I'll treasure this. And you'll come back next season. I'll come back next season, you promise. On the journey back to Madame Ishida's house, you reflect on the strange turns your life has taken. 3 years ago, you were Hanayuki, the Oiran, trapped in a beautiful cage, dependent on others' desires for your survival, pregnant with a child you couldn't keep. Today, your Yuki companion to a respected woman, financially independent, intellectually engaged, and free to make choices about your own future. You have meaningful work, genuine friendships, and the quiet satisfaction of having survived an impossible situation with your dignity intact. Most importantly, you've discovered that the most dangerous risk you ever took, choosing to hide your pregnancy and seek alternatives to conventional solutions, led not to destruction but to liberation. You learned that sometimes the path to freedom requires temporary deception, that survival often demands creativity more than compliance, and that women facing impossible circumstances can find ways to rewrite their own stories. Your story as an Oiran ended, but your story as a complete human being was just beginning. 5 years have passed since you last wore the elaborate kimono of an Oiran, and the woman you were then feels like a character from someone else's story. You're now established as Madame Ishida's trusted companion and assistant, with a reputation for discretion, intelligence, and the kind of refined social skills that make difficult situations manageable. Your life has acquired a rhythm that would have seemed impossibly peaceful during your years in the Yoshiwara. You wake each morning without the need to transform yourself into someone else's fantasy. You work with your mind rather than your body. You form relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial transaction. Most remarkably, you've discovered that happiness doesn't require the kind of intensity that characterized your previous life. Contentment, it turns out, can be found in simple things: a well-prepared meal, an interesting conversation, the satisfaction of work done well, the quiet pleasure of reading poetry in your own room without interruption. Today marks a special occasion, May's 8th birthday. You've made the journey to her village carrying a carefully chosen gift, a small wooden shamisen sized for a child's hands. Teaching her music won't reveal your relationship, but it will give you a way to share something meaningful from your own background. May has grown into a confident, curious child who shows remarkable aptitude for learning. Her adoptive parents beam with pride as they describe her progress in reading her helpfulness with household tasks and her natural leadership among the village children. She has such a quick mind, her adoptive mother tells you as you watch May examine her new instrument with fascination. Sometimes I think she could be anything she wants to be. The comment fills you with a mixture of pride and melancholy. This child who carries your blood and perhaps some of your talents will have choices you never had. She'll grow up free to pursue whatever path calls to her, unencumbered by the circumstances that shaped your own limited options. Could you show me how to make music with this, May asks, bringing the shamisen to you with the directness that characterizes all her interactions. I'd be honored to teach you, you reply. As you guide her small fingers to the proper positions, showing her how to pluck the strings to create simple melodies, you're struck by how natural it feels to pass on this knowledge. In the Yoshiwara, your musical skills were tools for pleasing clients. Here they become a bridge between generations, a way of sharing beauty without ulterior motives. It's harder than it looks, May observes after several attempts to coordinate her fingers. Most worthwhile things are, you tell her. But you have good instincts. With practice, you'll make beautiful music. As the afternoon progresses, you find yourself thinking about all the women throughout history who face situations similar to yours, women who became pregnant when pregnancy meant disaster, who had to choose between impossible options, who found ways to survive when conventional society offered no acceptable paths forward. Some, like you, found allies and alternative solutions. Others made different choices, accepting the herbs and remedies that ended pregnancies before they progressed too far. Still others disappeared entirely, leaving behind everything they'd built to start over somewhere else. All of these women shared the same fundamental challenge, navigating a world that punished them for biological realities beyond their control, that demanded impossible perfection while offering little support for achieving it. You were fortunate you had money saved. You found trustworthy allies, and you possessed skills that allowed you to reinvent yourself successfully. Not every woman in your situation had such advantages. As evening approaches and your visit draws to a close, May performs a simple melody she's learned on her new shamisen. The notes are tentative but true, and her face shows the concentrated pleasure of someone discovering a new ability. That was beautiful, you tell her sincerely. Will you teach me more songs when you visit next time? As many as you want to learn. On the journey back to the capital, you carry with you the sound of your daughter's music and the knowledge that she's growing up, confident, loved, and free to shape her own future. This knowledge doesn't erase the sadness of not being able to claim her as your daughter, but it provides something almost as valuable, the certainty that your sacrifice achieved its purpose. She has the life you wanted her to have. 10 years have passed since you made the desperate decision to hide your pregnancy and seek alternatives to the conventional choices available to women in your situation. Tonight, as you sit in your comfortable room in Madame Ishida's house, you're writing in a journal that no one else will ever read, recording the lessons you've learned from surviving an impossible situation. The first lesson, desperation, can be a source of creativity rather than just suffering. When conventional options are all unacceptable, the mind begins searching for alternatives that might never be considered under normal circumstances. Your pregnancy forced you to think beyond the obvious choices, to seek allies in unexpected places, and to develop skills you didn't know you possessed. The second lesson, survival, often requires temporary deception, but the goal should always be eventual authenticity. The months you spent hiding your condition were necessary, but the real victory came when you found a way to live honestly as the person you chose to become. The third lesson: women facing impossible circumstances are stronger and more resourceful than they often realize. You survived pregnancy while working as a courtesan, managed a complex network of allies and secrets, and successfully transitioned to an entirely different life. If you could do it, other women can too. The fourth lesson: the most dangerous risks sometimes lead to the most profound rewards. Choosing to hide your pregnancy was terrifying and potentially catastrophic. It was also the decision that led to freedom, independence, and the opportunity to define yourself on your own terms. You close the journal and prepare for bed thinking about May, who is now 13 and showing remarkable talent for music. She still doesn't know your true relationship to her, but she's grown into exactly the kind of person you hoped she would become: intelligent, confident, and kind. Tomorrow, you'll return to work that engages your mind and respects your dignity. You'll continue building a life based on choices rather than circumstances. And you'll carry with you the knowledge that even in the most restrictive, unforgiving societies, creative women can find ways to write their own stories. In the Yoshiwara, courtesans were expected to exist solely for others' pleasure, to have no needs or desires beyond those that served their clients. Pregnancy represented the ultimate violation of this expectation, proof that you were a complete human being with a body that functioned according to natural laws rather than male fantasies. But what seemed like a catastrophe became the catalyst for discovering who you really were beyond the roles others had assigned you. The floating world continues without you as it always has. Other young women wear the elaborate kimono, paint their faces white, and perform for men who mistake performance for reality. Some of them inevitably will face the same choices you faced. For those women, if they ever hear your story, you hope they'll remember this: the most dangerous situation can become the beginning of liberation if you're brave enough to think beyond the obvious choices and creative enough to imagine a different future. Sometimes the greatest risk is also the path to freedom. You survived, you chose well, and in choosing to save yourself, you also saved your daughter's future. That knowledge makes everything else, the fear, the deception, the sacrifice, worthwhile. The floating world taught you to be beautiful, accomplished, and pleasing to others. Real life taught you to be authentic, independent, and true to yourself. It was a fair trade. As you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps you're thinking about the extraordinary lengths women throughout history have gone to in order to survive circumstances that seemed impossible. The story of Japanese courtesans dealing with pregnancy is really a story about human creativity under pressure, about finding alternatives when conventional options are unacceptable, and about the courage required to risk everything for the chance at authentic life. These women lived in a world that was simultaneously magnificent and merciless, where beauty and artistry coexisted with vulnerability and exploitation. Their strategies for managing pregnancy, from herbal remedies to elaborate deceptions to finding allies among unlikely people, reflect the timeless human capacity to adapt, survive, and sometimes even thrive despite overwhelming challenges. History remembers the floating world for its aesthetic achievements, its contributions to art and culture, and its role in Japanese society. But it often overlooks the individual women who navigated its complexities, who faced impossible choices with limited resources, and who found ways to preserve their dignity and humanity despite circumstances designed to deny both. Tonight, as you settle into sleep, perhaps you'll dream of snow falling on quiet villages, of children learning to make music, of women who discover that the most dangerous risks can sometimes lead to the most profound freedoms. Rest well knowing that human beings have always found ways to survive, to choose courage over surrender, and to write their own stories even when the world insists they have no voice. Sweet dreams wherever in the world you're listening tonight.